You're listening to the New York Said Podcast.
Fear not, my friends. This will be my greatest performance.
Give it to me.
Here we go. We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Hey Shantell, how you doing?
Good. I'm driving, so if you hear any driving sounds, that's why.
No worries. I'm glad to talk to you. How's your day going? You all right?
Good. It's an early start. I'm in LA, so it's 9 o'clock here, but I seem to wake up a lot earlier here, so things get going quicker.
No worries.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm still playing Bounce Back because of all the craziness that's happening in the world. It gave me a chance to kind of refine and reset many of the projects and things that I was working on. So I appreciate that time.
That's good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a little reset, right?
Yeah, because it's kind of like you can look at it and go, okay, this is serving me. This isn't serving me. I'm doing a lot of things with this, but this probably could do a little bit better. But when it's like go, you just keep going. And so sometimes things fall astray and you don't get a chance to address them. So
That sounds like a productive exercise.
yeah. And it sounds almost esoteric and encrypted, but
Yeah.
when I was at the HOEK event, you mentioned that. You said something to the extent of the most valuable thing we have is time and what we do with that time. And that really resonated.
Yeah.
But congratulations. I was talking to everybody and talking to your team, and you have all kinds of things just cracking. You have your new font coming out.
Yep, Shantell Sands, kind of in the last stretch of it. So it realistically is probably going to come out at the top of the year.
Okay.
But a font has so many people or mechanisms or requirements involved. Especially I'm going to onboard it into Google Fonts first. It takes a lot more work than I thought myself.
Is it more consistency, or is it going to reflect the language that we normally see in your work, or is it a whole new language?
Well, basically, it's a typeface kind of, inspired by my handwriting, but it's professional. It's a little bit playful, and it's to encourage people who are outside of this kind of exclusive industry of typography to, I want to get them involved in it or curious about it. And so, that's why I've decided to release it as an OFL, which is an open font license, which means basically, I'm giving it to the world in the sense, you don't have to pay for a license to use it. You're just able to use it for free and commercially or non-commercially. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And, I could have charged, it's a nice font. It's extensive. I could have charged a license for it, but in a way, this is almost like my gift to the world of words, and hey, here's a font based on my handwriting.
Right.
And then also, that's kind of brave as an artist to be here's something based on my handwriting, something that's very unique to my work, but I'm giving it away to the world, because it will outlast me. People will be using Shantell Sands when they don't even know who Shantell is.
Right.
So,
you might mess around and be like the Helvetica of the future, or even better, Papyrus. Yeah. You're I'm the new Papyrus.
Yeah, exactly.
I did want to congratulate you on that collaboration and that residency over with HOEK. Was there anything that you took away from? Because I know you've done hundreds of collaborations, big ones, micro ones. Was there something that you took away especially from that collaboration?
I was happy to do that collaboration because it was on a smaller scale. They're out of Red Hook.
Mm-hmm.
It's, they make everything in-house. And I've worked on a lot of, big collaborations, as you know. And so I think every now and then it's nice to kind of bring that scale down.
Right.
And work with a more intimate group. And, also they are fairly new as a company. So, they're eager, they're open, they're encouraging, they're exploring. And that's, when I did that initial residency with them, that's where I kind of wanted to be again. I wanted to be experimenting and be exploring and be kind of open. And
yeah.
So it was a perfect timing.
And it felt really intimate.
Yeah.
It felt like you guys can just be who you are without all the theatrics of teams or what have you. And you just say, hey, I was hoping that the marker could happen a little bit less pressure with the machine,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's nice. There wasn't a big department where I'm talking to the creative department that's being filtered by the marketing department that has like some other department that just hangs out. You know, it was just like, it's like intimate, it's direct. And I think, you know, that came across in the work and the event. You know, it's also playful. Like, I think the work that we made from that, you know, as I said, kind of at the Mad Museum, it's design is another way of bringing art into people's homes.
Yep.
And often without the baggage that a lot of art comes with. You know, you don't have to be like over educated or have a degree or like walk into a museum, like a gallery. Like design, like you can buy a little coaster and it has cool art on it, and if you're curious, there's a bigger and deeper story beyond that and beneath that. And for me, that accessibility is a way of exposing people to art, because, you know, at the end of the day, anyone that's in art, like, you know, a lot of people just pretend that they want to bring art to the masses, but they don't, you know. So if you do, like, what are the ways where you can do that? And I think also design is a tool and a way that you can do that, you know.
And to be able to, I guess, do that delicate dance of aesthetic and functionality, it's not easy to do, but you guys pulled it off flawlessly.
Aesthetics, functionality, quality, you know, like all of that, you know, story, a lot of that.
Because, you know, thankfully, because of that Mad Museum event, we were able to get pretty close to the objects. And so when I looked at that piece, the sum of all parts, when you can like look at it, you can see that it wasn't just this printed out thing. And then when there's like a documentary playing on the screen and it shows that the robot is holding the marker. Can you talk about that experience of how to engage with a robot to say, this is something that I would normally do, but now you're going to do it? What was the challenges that you were up against with that?
Yeah, you know, I've explored and experimented with that type of thing like for years and kind of here and there, but never in a way of like creating a final product, you know. And this was fun because it's a lot of trial and error. We had to try like so many times to get that marker to feel right, because putting a marker in like rigging it to a CNC is totally different from like someone holding it with their hand. And so for me, it's fun because it's like satisfying to like get it good, because you still have to practice. You know, drawing is about practice. And even something like this involved a machine and was very technical. We still had to practice to get it to a point. But then we're still using something like an ink marker, which, you know, you're never going to get the same type of pressure. You know, it's always different. So built in are those kind of like layers or levels of just like difference as well. That's why it was nice, because every time that ink went down, you know, you, like I said, you're not 100% controlling it. So every time it is a little bit different. And I think that still comes across. So it is unique, even though we're coming at it from more of a maybe industrial kind of collaborative approach.
Yeah, but it still has that one-of-one feel to it, because it's anybody that knows about crank and crank mops and its ability to just do well on the street on any texture. I don't mean to sound like a commercial, but to now see it on a clean table being used by this big, massive monster of a machine holding this little tool to be able to execute the ideas that you ask it to create.
Yeah, completely.
But I also saw that you had a lot of your just traditional characters throughout the work, like the boat. Was that something that was intentional?
You know, I think in a way, like those characters are recurring, and they are, you know, they're a part of my language now. So almost regardless of the project, you know, I guess not always, like the ballet didn't have a bird boat, but maybe the backdrop did. I have to check. But, you know, I think a lot of these projects, because they are drawing from my language now, that in a way has become more and more defined, you know, those motifs or those symbols or those languages, they're going to be there because, you know, they're representative of myself and my work and the message and story. And they are connected to kind of like bigger narratives within themselves. So, you know, so I'm happy that they kind of play a role and pop up there.
Can you talk about the philosophy of everything starts with a line?
Well, everything does. Look at any industry, you know, the fashion industry, architecture, industrial design, you know, graphic design. You know, I think it's hard to find a creative industry, animation, that doesn't start with a line. And so that line can be quite literal, as in a drawn line, or that line could be metaphorical in like the path that you're on that led you to that place or to that industry or to that project or to that idea or to that thought. And I think, that line in a way also is another way of referencing the core or like the individual. In my work have, this recurring line in the sense of the physical type of line that I'm creating or drawing. But then I also have my line and my path and my core and my identity as an artist that has led me to the place that I'm in.
Last time we spoke might have been like 3 or 4 years ago. So welcome back. And one of the last things I asked you in that last one was, what was one of the most important things that you've learned so far? That last conversation that we had was more of an origin story where we talked about Japan and your life growing up and those things. And I mean, it was a great conversation, but a lot can happen in, say, 5 years. What has been one of the most important things you've learned to date?
It's a really hard question. I don't know. I think to answer that question, there's just going to be a few thoughts that pop up. And, one of them is to listen to yourself, to listen to the type of projects that you want to do, listen to the types of feelings and things that you want to do or say. I think since then, I feel a little bit displaced in my life. I'm never sure where I want to be living or where I want to be physically. Mm-hmm. And that can be kind of uncomfortable. But, I think there's a lesson of just kind of leaning into that uncomfortableness. Maybe some of us are not meant to have a place, what is typical or what is normal. And perhaps where you are is where you're meant to be. And I think so, just that consistent and constant lesson of just leaning into uncomfortableness. And I guess lastly, to continue to be open and to continue to share and continue to make. As time goes on, you get older and it's easier to become a little bit more complacent, or it's easier to like want to be a bit more comfortable, or it's easier to like want to do less or be less or like go less places. But I think as artists, it's kind of our jobs to just keep going, and I think, maybe in 5 years' time, you'll ask me again and I'm like, no, I'm on a friggin' island relaxing.
Right.
But until then, I'm going to try and lean into that and just keep making,
And I'd be remiss not to ask you, because this is when I knew I was going to talk to you again, I realized like you have done so many different types of collaboration. You've worked with so many companies and artists, and I've been paying attention. Just lastly, what is something that someone should keep in mind when they begin to find themselves working with or collaborating with a company or an artist? What's like one of the first things that you keep in mind before because I remember you said at the event, like sometimes if it's a no, it's a no, and that's okay. Like if it's not a fit, it's okay. But like, what are some of the things that you keep in mind before you're like, all right, it sounds like a lot of money or it sounds like a great opportunity, but it's not a fit?
I think it's just to keep valuing yourself. I had a project kind of recently. It was a lot of good money and not that much work really for the amount of it. But there was a couple of terms that morally I just didn't agree with in the contract. And like, on a bigger picture, maybe it doesn't matter. Like maybe it's not going to be a problem. Maybe it's not going to be an issue. But the fact that this company didn't want to budge to change something that I felt like morally or ethically just didn't make sense. And when I say it didn't make sense, is like, I think some of these companies forget that they're a big giant. They're a multi-million or billion-dollar company at sometimes, but they don't want to budge on something that's very like, kind of like ethically for the smaller individual artists, like is not a big thing for them.
Right.
And though that might do with like indemnity or force majeure or some of these like, legal jargon things. But, it's like, I would say that you have to value yourself and often valuing yourself means that you sometimes have to say no. And it depends for other people, because always what happens when I'm in that situation is the brand or the company will be like, well, these other artists signed it.
Right.
Or these other artists were okay
Peer
with
pressure.
Or no, not that. It's just like, well, it was, and they did it. So what's your problem?
Got you.
Not
okay being a team player. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, the fact that they signed it doesn't mean that it's okay. The fact that other people sign some of their own rights away doesn't mean that it justifies me having to sign my rights away, or it doesn't justify you not being willing to give me my rights. Also, just knowing that a lot of people, if you're dealing with a brand or an institution, most of those people are transitory. These people are not going to be with that brand for the rest of their life.
Yep.
But you are most likely, as an artist, going to be with your art and your brand for the rest of your life.
Damn.
And so you have to consider that those people are not 100% prioritizing what's good or what's bad or what's great at that time, because they're going to be gone in a couple of years.
Yes.
You have to, because you are with your art and with your brand and with your company and with yourself for the rest of your life. And if you want to have a long, a long career as an artist, like, you have to think long term. And I think just, reminding yourself that a lot of these people, how much fuss or whatever they pick up or kick up on certain points, they actually maybe deep down are not 100% invested in that, because they're looking for the next job or the next opportunity, When
you, and I know it's coming, and if you do it, when it's time for you to do your masterclass, that needs to be like, that is insane. But Shantell, sincerely, it's always great talking to you and always great catching up and always great seeing you. I sincerely appreciate your time and just sharing your story and your insight and things that you've learned on your journey, because that's pretty much what this whole entire project is about, is that give back. And before I skate, I do want to say I always appreciate the fact that you always give out stickers at your events.
Yeah.
I said, don't put those on anything. Just hold on to them. Like, those are exclusive stickers. Like, I've been looking at them things for like 7-8 years now. So, But
amazing.
Safe travels, Shantell. I'll speak to you soon. And thanks again for your time. We'll speak.
Thank you for your time. I enjoyed catching up, and we'll talk soon. Let me know if you got any other questions or anything comes up.
Peace.
Bye.